All right, folks. So markets have been recovering quite nicely, especially in the last day or two here. And I wanted to go over a few projects that are surging ahead of the altcoin pack right now and see what kind of metrics we can analyze and uh, conclusions we can draw from just how legitimate this rally is. Whether this is a dead cat bounce, whether this is something that is really just the beginning of, the bull rally after so many weak hands have been shaken out. We'll try to get to the bottom of it, and I'm starting here by showing you guys an article I put out a couple days ago called "Their Pain is Your Pleasure: Assets with Universal Short, Mid, and Long-Term Trading Losses." This essentially means that when we look at a metric, specifically MVRV, we can gather when both those short-term traders, the 1-day and 7-day traders, seeing when they are down a lot of money, combined with those who are at like the 30 to 60 to 90-day MVRV metrics, and seeing that they're down money, and also seeing that the long-term 1 year, 6-month returns, those are showing some trader losses as well. And when that happens, you'll see some of the best opportunities out there because MVRV is kind of well, it isn't kind of, it is a 0% metric when averaging everything out over a long enough period of time, no matter what the time frame is. And when we see some of these assets get close to or above these dashed lines, that shows that they're at a historical opportunity that's in like the 10% best spot for when prices start to turn around. On the other end, you can see something like the sandbox. It was one that was doing quite well the last couple of days, and that was why it was the only one in red, showing that it was actually getting close to the danger zone instead. So long story short, we can look at a model like that to quickly take a snapshot of a few of the best opportunities out there. And I was able to gather that XRP was looking pretty good. We saw that Compound here was looking quite good. The reason they're looking good is, of course, because their MVRVs, when averaging out multiple different time frames, are looking at or even surpassing some of their best lowest MVRV marks over the past year. As we can see, Compound, for example, it's pretty much matched where it was back in late June when, what do you know, prices suddenly turned and went positive for a pretty long stretch before more volatility happened after the MVRV went positive. So we hunt for the metric or the assets that have these negative MVRV averages and try to essentially buy into other traders' pain. It sounds, brutal, but that really is what trading is. When you buy low and sell high, you're buying low when other weak hands are dropping off their their coins and saying, I can't bear to lose any more. I'm going to get out because it looks like it's just going to sink forever. And right when those weak hands do that, it's known as capitulation, and the opportunists out there jump in and say, okay, I'll take your low priced bags and buy the dip essentially. So, people have been buying dips since, arguably, uh, mid-May for Compound and many altcoins. Some altcoins jumped back up here. Compound was, of course, one that never really got a big rebound since mid-May. And all of those dip buyers haven't really seen too much good fortune come their way. So with that, the average trader returns for 1 day, 7-day, 30-day, 90-day, 180-day, and 365-day trade returns are all negative right now. And that is the indication that capitulation is either there or very close to being there. So that's Compound. We also went over the graph, went over Loopring, Uniswap, and Aave. And I have selected 4 of those that, since writing the article just a couple days ago, have surged and done pretty well. Obviously, any article I write or any of the Santiment staff write, it isn't investment advice, but when the metrics come to fruition successfully that quickly, it's a good opportunity for us to review and see, why that happened, and then draw conclusions as to where we are now. So we're looking at Uniswap now, and we're just going to do this for all four of these assets up here, and kind of go over where we stand, whether the rally will continue, and see what we can come up with. So starting with Uniswap, we're looking at circulation. Based on this, not really seeing much change. So on-chain wise, not really much there on the circulation side. On daily active address side, it actually looks a little bit worse because we've just seen this constant drop, if you want to call that kind of the high for the past 6 months or so, which is, it looks like it was. October 29th had 3259 daily active addresses. The latest day had just 836. So obviously not the greatest sign there, considering these utility metrics, circulation and daily active addresses, are often the metrics to look at to justify that prices can rise. That being said, there are still plenty of other things. We can, of course, look at just the 30-day MVRV, which is a nice swing trading, mid-range for what a MVRV can look like. And, we typically look for anything below 15% to be a good opportunity zone. And we definitely jumped way below 15% there. 15% is all the way, looks like right around there. So we are well into the opportunity zone still for Uniswap. So that's a good thing, and that's exactly why it was showing up on the MVRV model before. Social dominance side, Uniswap is picking up a little bit. You can see it really bottomed out and was barely being talked about at all. But now it's, it spiked at about 1.6, 1.7% of all discussions among the top 100 crypto assets. And that was the biggest it had really seen since the first week of January. So that's a good sign. As far as funding rates go, we try to look for shorting that might be going on. People who expect that this rise will not last and it will go down. And generally, if there's a lot of shorting, that means liquidations can happen that can only fuel the prices up higher. But from what we're seeing, Binance has been flat. FTX is actually going long now. Looks like people are trying to ride the wave up and expect it to continue. And DYDX has been, it looks like because of this spike, it's kind of skewed, but they're longing as well. So not a great sign there. It looks like the crowd is kind of putting their bets on this rally continuing, and we'd rather them be panicky and worried. Weighted sentiment is interesting. It looks like people are quite negative about Uniswap right now, and that is a good thing. People here, at least on social networks, are not commenting about Uniswap, going to the moon or anything yet. So that's a good thing. That means there's still a lot of FUD going on for social posts that are happening right now. As far as whales go, I've got the 100 to 10,000 tier highlighted. I can actually go up a tiny bit. I'm going to say that whales for an asset that's sitting at just above $10 at around $11 now, the whales typically will start around the 10,000 to 100 and 100 to 1 million groups. And that's showing that the whales are actually moving up, which is a great sign. They've been on a pretty nice trend upwards for most of the last 6 months, since showing a little bit of dump action in late August. But since then, they were at 8.58% of the supply held back then, and they're up to an even 10% as of today. So that's a very promising sign for the key stakeholders who have the most on the line and are placing the heaviest fiat bets in terms of their longs and their positions with Uniswap. Exchange flow balance, I also wanted to point out that there was one big spike that occurred. That's a bit of a concern. It means that this was pretty much the largest amount of Uniswap, the difference between inflows and outflows, that is, since late December. So we're looking at about a month high on inflow for Uniswap. Supply and exchanges, also a little bit concerning. It looks like the supply is actually moving up and has been moving up since mid-December. And it's at its highest point, at least over the last 6 months. Let's see how the last year has looked. So yeah, it looks like the last time the supply on exchanges has been this high was June 25th. So we're looking at about a 7-month high now. So that's Uniswap. We'll jump on to the next one. I'll try to keep each one brief. Circulation for Aave. Again, all of these assets are reflective of good price days that happened right after the article was released. And Aave is up 13% in the last 24 hours, sitting back at $162, which it was last at just about a week ago before taking a pretty big price dump. But circulation here looking underwhelming, really nothing special going on. Moving down to MVRV, it is looking better. Again, we can draw a line at around 15%. It's funny, the axis is not showing. If I do that, it will though. There we go. So 15% is here. That would be the 30-day opportunity zone. As long as it's still below, it looks like a better historical time to add to your position than usual. And despite the MVRV really starting to surge up after the great 24 hours that it had, it's still below that opportunity zone, which is a good thing. So that would indicate this rally can continue a little bit longer, and there's still a lot of pain that has been welled up for Aave traders. Social dominance, nothing special here. In fact, it seems to be kind of a continued decline. I can actually turn on a long-term indicator, since these are short 4-hour candles, and it confirms that the social dominance has been dropping over time. So that's not really anything to write home about there. Funding rate, of the 3 funding rates we have on Binance, FTX, and DYDX, Binance is even. FTX is back positive after there was quite a bit of shorting going on the last couple weeks, and DYDX is back in negative territory. So this, between Uni and Aave, it looks like people are slightly more doubtful of Aave being able to rebound back to, the end of 2021 prices. And that's a good thing for those who are longing Aave. It means that there's still quite a bit of doubt there that you can buy into. And if prices continue to rise, liquidations will only fuel those price rises up further. Daily active addresses, nothing special. It's kind of just continuing a long-term decline here, which is a concern. So I would be wary of this, considering circulation isn't looking much better. Daily active addresses, an average day as of recently is about 619 daily active addresses. After 6 months ago, it was sitting at about double that, at about 1,300. We'll skip mean dollar invested age, nothing really special happening there. Weighted sentiment, just like Uniswap, it's still looking like people are quite negative on social media about it. This can be related to it simply not being talked about much, but also the ratio between positive and negative comments is favoring negative commentary more than usual. As far as whales for an asset that is priced at $162, we typically look at 100,000 or more. So that would be, if I'm doing my math right, 1,000 to 100,000. We'll see how that looks. And this is interesting. It looks like the accumulation was starting right as it was starting to bottom out here between the 20th and the 22nd or so. And they've been accumulating ever since. And this is a pretty good group of whales to follow, because they correctly started to take profit just as this local top was forming at the end of December. And they continued to take profit until this opportunity started to present itself. Obviously, it dumped a couple days after they just started to accumulate, but they just kept accumulating more and more as the price bottomed out there the last couple of weeks. So this is a good sign from the key stakeholders for Aave. Nothing really special on exchange flow balance and supply and exchanges. If we look at the last year, it's been kind of a whirlwind, but the good news is, as of recently, the last 3 weeks or so, it's starting to move down again, and it actually got back down to levels that we haven't seen since late June. So more good signs than bad for Aave. Between Aave and Uniswap so far, it looks like Aave has a few more bullish metrics going its way. All right, Decentraland, another very popular asset as of late. It went on quite a rally. 24-hour change doesn't do it justice because it actually, if I full screen this, it actually bottomed out on the 22nd, and the price actually jumped about 40% over the last 9 days or so. So that's one of the best performing altcoins in the top 100, 150 or so. And with that, the MVRV is actually in the orange. If we look back over here on this chart, Decentraland is back in orange, one of the few assets that has had a lot of good short-term success. And that means that it is actually semi-overbought now. So keep that in mind. We'll see how the 30-day one MVRV chart looks as we jump over to it in just a minute here. As far as circulation goes, certainly nothing too crazy going on. We have seen kind of an uptick right as it was bottoming out. It was really low with about, it looks like an average of about 9.5 million back in mid-January, and then it started to tick up and peaked at about 21.75 million mana circulating per day. So it's up a little bit, but you can see just how much like November and late October really dwarfed it when they were getting something like 124 million, got as high as about an average of 158, 159 million mana circulating per day. So we're still nowhere near that, and that's not a great sign for the utility of Decentraland. As far as MVRV goes, just as confirmed, it actually not only has it jumped back above that negative 15% line, which I can mark here. This is our opportunity zone. It's actually surpassed that 3 days ago, and it's up into positive range now, where this right here would be the danger zone. So if you are considering taking profit, note that it is getting very close to that point in which local tops historically start to occur for pretty much any altcoin or Bitcoin or Ethereum out there. So obviously MVRV is a concern now, considering the 30-day traders are well into the positive range and in double digits, mind you. Social dominance, not much. And that's actually interesting to me because this has been one of the more talked about assets I've seen on my timeline going through Twitter a little bit, but it's obviously a small sample size. I just assumed that a 40% gain over the last 9 days, where the rest of crypto has been kind of volatile and up and down, that should be drawing a little more attention than it has been. But the reality is it's been kind of quietly climbing. Funding rate of the two that Decentraland is listed on, that we have metrics on, Binance is interestingly showing a pretty negative funding rate right now. It's actually at that most negative range that it's been in since late October, when we saw this huge anomaly and everyone was shorting after a massive spike occurred. I believe this was really related to the metaverse and some of the news that was going on with mana being associated with it. But regardless, seeing that we're shorting, people are shorting on Binance and they're shorting on FTX as well. You can see we're seeing the same kind of big spike right now. That's a sign that people think that this tiny little local top here was the big top that is going to signal it falls back down. But with this amount of shorting, note that many people generally can be wrong, especially when the spikes go this deep. You can see what happened on this spike here in early December. Everyone started to short after a big plummet here. and look at all these liquidations that happened after the price jumped back up. It went from 340 to 412 or so in the matter of a day. And with that, a lot of shorts got liquidated pretty quickly, and it gradually rose all the way back up into a positive funding rate. And what do you know, right? When it got super positive, price plummeted. So it's pretty cyclical. And right now, this is one of the most bullish metrics for Mana because there's such an immense amount of shorting that it's bound to these huge spikes are bound to be liquidated at some point because people shorting to this extent usually doesn't go too well. Daily active addresses, not much going on here. Again, a bit of a surprise. I would have thought that daily active addresses would pick up a little bit with this really nice rise going on that is kind of decoupled from the rest of the markets, but it is what it is. Utility is staying pretty low right now. Same with mean dollar invested age, not a lot of dormant movement right now. Weighted sentiment also showing pretty negative right now. So that's a good sign, just like we saw for Uniswap and Aave. And then last but not least, if we look at the key stakeholders for Mana, the price is at 276. So I'm going to mark this at 100,000 to 10 million. That's about 276,000 to what is that? $27 million. Those addresses that hold that amount of USD value. I'm going to confirm that. And key stakeholders are probably one of the prime reasons that prices are continuing to go up. You can see how much of a good leading indicator the whales are. See this huge accumulation that occurred between the 28th and 29th, followed by this big spike on the 30th. That was great alpha right there. You can see how there was some profit taking here, then another big accumulation spike followed by huge price spike going up here. And even after prices dipped, look at how the key stakeholders just stayed high, and we're near that all-time high still, where the 100,000 to 10 million coin holders are at 36.74% of the supply held right now after peaking at 37.29%. So they're very close to being there once again. Very good sign and a good bullish sign for Mana. So recap on Mana / Decentraland, it looks like it's got some very polarizing metrics right now. MVRV not looking great, the on-chain metrics not looking great, but funding rate and whale activity clearly are indicating that there could be a little more steam left before any sort of correction goes on. All right, and last but not least, I wanted to look at Solana. Now, for those of you who follow us closely, you know that we don't have as much data when it comes to ERC20s. But with that, Solana has been a popular asset. It recently, I think today, or just these past 24 hours, surpassed $100 again for the first time since about 10 days ago. So not a long period of time, but still, this was a nice sight for people who have been on the Solana train for a while. It's up about 16.5% over the past 24 hours, also a very good sight. And because we don't have all of those same utility metrics, I wanted to instead show how the development activity is looking, as well as a few social metrics really quickly. We can see that development activity over the last 6 months appears to be on a nice rise. I'll zoom out to the last year, see if we can get anything more. Yeah, so clearly like the daily GitHub submissions, if I can change this to one day instead of 12 hours. So the daily GitHub submissions is sitting at about a little over 500 a day right now after, 6 months ago, or a year ago, I should say, being at 190. So that's a very good sign. And it's indicative of the fact that Solana's team still believes in improving the product, innovating where possible, and they believe that it has long-term sustainability. And that's a really great thing to keep in mind when it comes to any asset, whether it's a non-ERC20 or an ERC20 or anything else. So I can also compare that. If I go to Bitcoin, type in dev, click on that, and this is compared to Bitcoin's development activity on the same axis. And look how much Solana is dwarfing Bitcoin. Obviously, Bitcoin's its own entity, and it has kind of a unique development type of team compared to other assets. If we compared it to something that has more of a traditional team with consistently high development activity, we can look at Ethereum, and we can see that even Solana is dwarfing that. Ethereum's getting about 142, 143 development activity submissions a day. Solana's way up there above 500. So that's very, very good to see for the long-term viability of Solana. Just keep in mind, there could be some continued volatility, especially with us not having, the on-chain and whale metrics like we have for the other Ethereum-based assets. We're a little more blind when it comes to where prices may go next. But development activity looking great. Social dominance, I'll look at just the last 6 months again. It looks like we are seeing another nice uptick. We saw a few of them last week when prices were really starting to bottom out. That's common. We tend to see the biggest dominance spikes when there's either a big rise or a big fall. You can see all the big dominance spikes that dwarfed where we are now occurred back here in late August, early September, when prices were absolutely soaring above $200 per Solana. And then we saw this one, which was interesting, might have been related to a fundamental event. I can't remember, some of you may know. But right now, we're kind of seeing another mini spike. We've seen plenty of them. We'd want to see this maybe get above 5% or so. I'm just arbitrarily eyeballing things. But if we started to see a spike around here, that could indicate that people are really starting to recognize a big surge. And that would actually be something to look out for, because it means that people are getting a little bit too FOMO-esque with the asset. For now, it looks safe enough. This is not a super notable spike that's going to make us fear that the mainstream is getting too euphoric about Solana. And then finally, still actually two more. We can look at funding rate, which has just gone positive again. It had been one of the more shorted assets, which might have something to do with its big day. So back to pretty much neutral territory, if not just below it right now. FTX is also pretty much neutral, and DYDX is also pretty much neutral. So nothing really special going on with excessive shorts or longs right now for Solana. And then finally, weighted sentiment. We do see this spike here, which is, I think, an incomplete day. I think that this might actually be where it last was. And this is kind of a still compiling day. So ignore this huge plummet, which would be like a record low in negative sentiment. But it does indicate that people are still a bit negative on Solana and a little bit doubtful, which is a good thing. But this is pretty close to neutral, so I wouldn't be too crazy about it. Overall, the long term looks promising for Solana, especially with its development activity looking good. Social dominance is fine. Short term, it's really tough to say because funding rate is so neutral. So this is one of those assets that's really just going to depend on Bitcoin's overall market health, and we will do another video on Bitcoin and Ethereum in the near future to keep you guys up to date on that. Hopefully this was helpful. We'll try to do more of these altcoin analyses, because I know that on our weekly This Week in Crypto calls, we usually only get to 2 or 3 projects at a time. And this is our way of trying to get other projects that we know you guys are interested in more involved in our content. Would love a like and subscribe on our videos, and this video in particular. It helps keep the train rolling and allow us to see what kind of content you really like and dislike. So please continue to do that. Appreciate you all. Hope you're all staying safe and warm as always, and we will talk to you very soon.